Hi, my name is Lakshmi Ajay and I'm an associate editor with Stack Media. Today I'm in conversation with Frank van Gelder, and he is the Secretary General at Pharma.Aero, and we are in conversation at the Air Cargo Africa. So I wanted to start off by asking you, why does Pharma.Aero find it important to actively invest in the African region and expand your presence here?
What we have learned in the past couple of years, especially through the pandemic, to see how vulnerable a continent like Africa still is when it comes down to distribution of pharmaceutical products. Secondly, it is a very large continent. And so we have like 1.2 billion people, inhabitants in the African continent, representing a lot of the challenges we have towards our pharmaceutical exports. So for that reason, it is a must for Pharma.Aero to further explore the possibilities in the African continent.
Pharma.Aero also recently created a white paper, in-depth assessment of the steep pharma certification along with IATA. Could you tell us about some of the outcomes of it and why it was important to do?
It's actually on a permanent basis that CEIV is part of what Pharma.Aero is doing. Next to GDP certification and others, CEIV for us is one of the leading certification programs. Most of our members are CEIV certified. So when we 4 years ago wrote the first white paper on the CEIV certification, we concluded at that time already that there has to be a follow-up project on a longer. That's what we did. We brought our members together and we actually asked them to have a look at the different components of the CEIV certification program. And so the outcomes we have in the white paper will be now the subject for further in-depth project analysis. And the final goal of this is on a continuous basis to look at the CEIV certification and also try to help IATA, with whom we have a partnership, in further improving on a permanent basis the CEIV certification program.
Clear. The pharma industry saw a massive shift during the pandemic as it served to inoculate millions of people with the vaccine. What are some changes that took place in the pharma industry that are irreversible according to you?
The pandemic has exposed us to a lot of new development, technology-wise. Before the pandemic, our supply chain of air cargo was still very, very fragmented and very multi-stakeholder isolated almost. So sharing of data, putting ourselves at the table to collaborate together for a problem was more like talking about it rather than doing it. So we were not walking the talk. The pandemic imposed overnight the necessity to start collaborating. So I think one of the most important changes that stayed and is now permanently present is the drive to collaborate outside the individual stakeholders and the companies. A nice example of that is, for instance, that we could bring regulatory bodies, vaccine production companies, and the supply chain stakeholders together at one table and prepare them, make them ready for transporting the vaccines.
Digitalization would also be a conversation post-pandemic.
Yes, for sure. For sure. We should not forget at first that digitalization or digital technology has been heavily implemented in the development of the vaccine. The fact that a company like Pfizer, BioNTech or Moderna could develop a vaccine overnight is thanks to artificial intelligence, thanks to availability of data and data sharing, digital technology. So there it started already. That further pushed, I would say, the supply chain industry and the logistics industry to do the same. Extremely important to know that the vaccines would arrive in the right condition, would arrive in the right time, and that it would be traceable and visible throughout the entire supply chain. So yes, digital technology has definitely, I would say, accelerated also within our industry.
In your community. So pivoting off this question, in Pharma.Aero's industry paper on the cell and gene therapy market and logistics has called for greater collaboration between the cell and gene therapy sector of the air transport sector in order to reduce the logistical complexity. This is a very complex vertical. It also looked into ensuring potential adaptations necessary to prepare the air cargo industry to assuring high quality end-to-end transportation of biopharma and CGT products. What can you tell us about this project and its outcomes?
Yeah, so it's important to realize, and I want to make the statement clear, as we speak, our industry is not ready to do this type of product on a larger scale. We have still clinical trials, smaller shipments today, but if we commercialize and we go to a higher level of using cell and gene therapy, let us say within the next decade, today we're not ready for that. First of all, learn to know more about what is cell and gene therapy and what might be complex. The most important elements we saw is, of course, the deep temperature that is needed for cells. We talk about live cells. Then the closed loop logistics. The patient becomes his own therapy, which is difficult. That means you transport something to another place and it needs to come exactly to that same place within a fast time frame or within a fixed time frame. And then thirdly, when we look at quality standards towards digital technology, like I would say traceability, visibility on the supply chain, that's something that needs to be done. Otherwise, the pharmaceutical companies or the clinical therapy programs can't apply that. So that is why this is a super drive for us as Pharma.Aero, together with our stakeholders, to prepare the entire world and the industry for doing this on a larger scale.
We hear constantly from biopharma players that regulatory bodies find it very difficult to sort of, find a legal way to place these drugs or place these therapies. Is that something that you guys are working on?
Yeah, that will come along with the project we're doing. I mean, one of the components and one of the analytics we found is regulatory bodies. For instance, in customs clearance procedures, today there is not really a clear cell and gene therapy label. Yeah. Secondly, within necessities that need to be done in insurance, liability is something we are not ready. These are therapies that cost between 50,000 and 2 million euro per patient. And if it goes wrong, it definitely goes wrong in two different ways. You lose the money, but secondly, the patient who has a deadly disease at that time, cancer, loses his only chance on therapy. That means that we need to look in liability, insurances, how are we gonna fix that? So next to, I would say, pure technical, operational aspects for cell and gene therapy, there is also a very big factor in the other direction, towards legal authorities, towards custom clearance agents and custom clearance authorities, and of course, collaboration between different countries and programs. Sensitization.
For the air cargo industry.
Yeah.
I want to move to sustainable packaging, AI technology and visibility in the supply chain, when you can know how your shipment is doing in real time. So these are some of the most impactful innovations that have started, especially the digital transformation. You spoke about it. So how do you see this benefiting the pharma industry?
That I have to turn your question in the other way around. I think if you look inside pharmaceutical companies today, they are way ahead of us in applying the newest digital technology. If you look at them, they are applying artificial intelligence on a larger scale, digital twinning on a larger scale. I would say it rather in a different way. What can we learn in the fast development of digital technology in pharmaceutical companies, and then align with them to further work on it? Because go to your previous question, cell and gene therapy. You start within a pharmaceutical company or a healthcare facility and start getting data. These data come back and the supply chain sits in between. I think the biggest question that might come with digital technology transformation is the safety of the data. Because the longer we see the development of pharmaceutical products, more patient-sensitive data might come into the game. And that's where data safety and security becomes a very important element.
Is sustainability in packaging a conversation that you guys are having within your community?
Yes. So Pharma.Aero is also looking with pharmaceutical shippers or pharmaceutical manufacturers. We are looking at how we can make the entire supply chain more sustainable. And that's multi-complex. It's not only the packaging that makes a difference. And there are many different things. For instance, if you look at dry ice, 20 years ago and 10 years ago and 5 years ago, dry ice with headache, difficult to get and so on. Well, we see now with companies that work directly hand in hand with pharmaceutical companies that they have come with recycled CO2, making the supply chain more green. That's only one technology. Packaging, together with cooling technologies, need to be sustainable. There is now the question, need the packaging to be reused, or is it just one-time use? And all these calculations and statistics are made. Give an idea, send today a disposable packaging to Africa. It might end up in the street somewhere where it might be very unsustainable. Hazardous. So these are all conversations we have and we think of. As from yesterday, Pharma.Aero will embed sustainability in every project we will do in the future. Because sustainability is not anymore an industry problem, it has become a human problem. Global warming will dramatically affect everything. And
including supply chain.
Including supply chains. And of course, supply chains also sustainable in production, sustainable in availability. We have to know that up to 600 million people in Africa today have no access to essential drugs. We need to make that more sustainable as well. So the sustainability for us goes in a wider range of our projects and applications.
Right. Pharma.Aero and Humanitarian Logistics Association have signed an MOU in 2021. In the humanitarian context, you want to have delivery. So could you talk a bit about how this partnership is going to work moving forward?
Humanitarian Logistics Association and ourselves, we came together because we have certain overlaps when we look at certain markets or certain developments on a global scale. Our partnership will definitely result in very specific projects and where we can increase each other's intelligence, but also increase each other's input. At the end of the result, improve supply chain as we talk. Nice example is the recent project we did together with Ajay on proving that drone delivery in the last mile might be of high value when we look at disasters, when we look at remote areas, hard to reach. And we will further collaborate in that direction.
Right. Pharma.Aero has come out with 2 more reports on the COVID-19 vaccine transportation and the supply chain.
Yeah, Sunrays, the project Sunrays, yeah.
Right, Project Sunrise. So what should you tell us about, these reports? What are you hoping to glean from this?
I think the report as such started from an absolute need to go back together with StatTimes. We were the first association already looking at vaccine development back in May 2020. So we were 2 months in the pandemic, and we did 3 webinars together looking what needs to be done. So the need was created, and it was clear that no one could solve this problem on his own. Not a freight forwarder, not an airline, not an airport, not a pharma company. What came out of those white papers is, again, the need for walk the talk and collaborate. You hear a lot around the world that collaboration is important, but to say it and to do it is 2 different worlds. And that's exactly what the 2 white papers went to, through use cases from different airport members, but also through creating communities around the COVID-19 vaccine distribution, and then report on what are the most important takeaways. Readiness of the airport, talking with authorities, making sure that you create agile, lean and efficient logistics. Not over-engineering, but just correct engineering for doing it. That were the most important takeaways.
And what about the people who are part of the pharma industry across the value chain? What kind of conversations are your stakeholders having there?
That's a good question. So Pharma.Aero is quite unique in the world because we are one of the only organizations where we bring airport communities and pharmaceutical manufacturers in one room running the organization. So they have a strategic role in our organization. What conversations do we have with them is very simple. They come to us with problems they face. And that's where we generate a potential project. So they say we have this or this problem, let's see if we can do a project. So actually every project we do with Pharma.Aero is initiated by our stakeholders and or the pharmaceutical manufacturers. And that, of course, brings immediately flesh to the bone. We walk, talk, and we can prove to the industry that we work on a problem that you might see on a small scale, but that can be on a global scale. And that's why, for us, it's important to be neutral and to be evidence-based. A nice example of that is our masterclass, where we are in a week training. We bring both academic world and research and development on scientific level, with use cases from the industry and problems. And then we debate for an entire week, we train for an entire week on the different aspects we face. And the most important takeaways from the masterclass are mostly what are we going to do in the next 3 years and how we're going to can we tackle that problem. Thank you.